It's making things right between us.
Okay, hi everyone. So very good afternoon to everyone. So thanks for joining us today. So welcome to our very first Peer 71 Roadshow for SmartPod Challenge 2022. Yeah, so during roadshows, we have interviews with corporates who have contributed to our innovation challenges. And my name is Jalene and I'll be your moderator for the session today. So in case you're not familiar with SmartPod Challenge, it's actually a flagship event of Peer 71, which stands for Pod Innovation Ecosystem Reimagined at Block 71. And it's a program co-founded by MPA and NUS Enterprise. So this year, we have 15 innovation opportunities, which are championed and supported by 22 maritime corporates and organizations. So how this roadshow will be run. So the first hour is learning more about the innovation opportunities, and there's also a chance for you to ask your questions. Yeah, so for those who are joining us on Zoom, you can just key in your questions in the chat box, and my colleague will let me know your questions. And for those who are joining us physically today, you can just shout out your questions. Yeah, so following that, we'll have another 30 minutes. That will be a networking session for those who are joining us in person today. Yeah, so for today, we'll be hearing from one of our corporates, Ron from PCL. So right before we begin, maybe we could play a short video to give a quick overview on this innovation opportunity. Yeah, could we have the video on screen, please?
To stay competitive and agile, vessel operators are embarking on digitalization journeys by introducing new technological solutions on board. Every time we implement new solutions on board, it usually means installation of additional cables and electrical points. The use of different solutions by each service provider creates a bottleneck in the staging and transmission of data. Moreover, in the absence of a common interface to receive and integrate inputs from multiple sources, we have to return to the respective service providers for customization in order to integrate. This makes exploring and trying new solutions difficult. To reduce this friction, Pacific Carriers is looking for a cost-effective and efficient solution that facilitates the consolidation of multiple interfaces to facilitate the staging and transmission of various data.
Yep, okay, so thanks for the very short and concise overview of the problem statement. So maybe we can start straight away. So the problem statement from PCL is how might we overcome the challenges that face multiple interface standards present in a vessel operator's ability to effectively stage and transmit data. So if you don't mind, Ron, maybe you could quickly introduce yourself, maybe give a little bit about what you do and hit directly into sharing more about the challenge statement.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you for having me here. So I think, firstly, my name is Ron. I'm actually from PCL, and I'm also taking care of Porsche Fleet Services. Both are a member of the Quote group, right? So in this case, our problem statement it is quite straightforward, right? So we just are looking for a solution that actually helps us to not just stage the data, but having a vanilla way to interconnect all the sensors together and sort of transmit the data up. So if you look at whether it's a downstream, midstream, or upstream, and try to imagine the downstream, which is where the end users are actually using it, is actually where the cloud is, and people are actually sending data up. The midstream, this part is where the integration happens, right? So today, if you look at preventive maintenance, there would be some sort of sensors available, whether it's wired, wireless, Bluetooth, etc. Right? That's one type of sensors already, right? So the other type of sensors in this case is around performance. So we can add on as many different initiatives that we want, but if each company comes in with a different sort of sensors, our trouble as operators is we can't manage and lay out new cables fast in time or fast enough to actually roll out this stuff or to even test out all these initiatives. So again, we are looking for a solution which is more in the middle layer where everything can be consolidated as one and helping us to send out the data in one single format.
Okay, thanks for sharing us. So I was wondering, because you did mention there's the downstream, there's the midstream, there's the upstream as well. Maybe you could elaborate a bit more about the midstream and upstream as well?
Right. So the upper stream in this case is all towards the clouds and everything else because you are actually sending data out of the vessel. The middle stream is where you consolidate stuff together, and the downstream is actually again depending on what the context is, right? If it's preventive maintenance, right? If I'm doing preventive maintenance on a or predictive maintenance in this case on an engine, for example, these are where the downstream sensors are. You can put in one or two sensors there. Maybe I'll put in another few sensors in the air conduct, whatever that is. These are downstreams. In the middle stream, how do all these comes together today? Right. This is where our struggle starts. I could have, vendor A that provides all these in one sensors for engine, and then there will be a vendor B who's going to use the different sensors altogether. Right.
Yeah.
So I end up with different sensors and even a middle layer, what we call the integration part, where each of them is trying to send out on their own. What we are looking for is if there is one box, right, to integrate all of these together and send it out, that would be the ideal. So if you want to put in layman terms today, everybody has a smartphone, right?
Yeah.
What we are looking for is like a USB-C, which works for everything. Yeah.
Okay, so you're saying that we currently have different sensors from different vendors and they might not be very compatible. So just wondering like how is the data kind of being like extracted out currently, given that there are different sensors?
It depends on the vendor. So we have seen vendor that uses Bluetooth, for example, right? That will then stage the data in their own server before sending it out. We have also seen hardwired sensors that again having their own staging before sending it out. So you end up with multiple streams of data being sent out through our internet. Right, as most people would know, maritime, especially vessels, we have very limited in bandwidth.
Yeah.
Right. We would like to consolidate and compress as much as we could before sending it out.
Okay, I think because you did mention that currently, I'm not sure whether your company uses cables. Are you currently using cables for? You mentioned something about cables just now, and that it's quite difficult for it to turn over really quickly because you kind of lay all the cables in place.
Yes, currently we use a mixture of cables as well as Bluetooth devices.
Okay, so for cables, are you looking to kind of replace it with all the sensors, hence the need for everything to be consolidated in one platform, or yeah?
No, actually, whatever cable is laid, chances are nobody is going to remove them, right? So ideally, if there is some form to change the adapter, or ways to make it wireless, all these are the solutions that we're actually looking for to make it, really compatible with anything that comes in.
Okay, so in other words, the solution kind of has to take the data from the cables as well as the sensors that are already on board. So it kind of has to cover all these areas.
Yeah, we are looking at different type of cables. Even cable types has a few kind, right? So we are looking at ways to integrate different type of cables. We are talking about wireless. We are talking about Bluetooth. Just different ways to take everything together and send it out.
Okay, that's interesting. Maybe you could share with our audience a little bit more on how. Maybe are there any methods that your company has previously tried to like consolidate all this data, or maybe kind of the challenges that startups like potentially face? Because you did mention that the bandwidth is not exactly very high, so maybe you could share a few more challenges that startups might face.
Yeah, so other than bandwidth itself, what we did try with one of, I'm not sure they are part of a Pier71 before. They have ways to do what we call a mesh sort of network, right? That you, without having to lay cables, you can actually expand the entire wireless network down to, let's say, the engine rooms, and sensors can actually connect to those wireless via Bluetooth technologies.
Okay.
Right, but again, you see now, it becomes a proprietary for them that you have to use the Bluetooth, right? So if such a technology happens, what we are really hoping for is, can we leverage on this technology or even this particular hardware in the engine room where we can, connect other sensors to it.
Okay. You did mention hardware, so just wondering if there are any rules or regulations for maybe installation of hardware or installation of any of these solutions that you're looking for.
Not really. Depends on where the sensors is going to be installed or where the wireless is going to be transmitted. So if it's going to be in the tank or any sensitive area, then it will have to be explosion proof.
Okay, so for other places that are maybe not so hazardous, like the tanks, there are currently not that many regulations, or are there still kind of regulations that they have to abide to make sure their solution kind of aligns with that? Yeah.
Yeah, maybe for PCL, because we run a mixture of wet tankers and dry tankers. So for wet, in this case, is oil tankers as well as gas tankers. So anything that is exposed to the air and not within the accommodation area, then it will need to be explosion proof.
Okay. So maybe at this point, I just wanted to check if there are any questions on Zoom, or if you can feel free to type your questions in the chat, and we'll always be free to answer them. Or if you have any questions from the floor currently. Okay, maybe we will take the questions towards the end of this session instead. Yeah. So maybe you could share a bit more about PCL and what exactly the business does, because I do realize that some of our startups are actually not from the maritime sector, so it's actually a bit it's a good background for them as well.
Right, so PCL stands for Pacific Carriers Limited. We run a mixture of wet and dry tankers, like I said. We transport dry cargoes, wood, metal, etc. And we also deal with the oil transport as well as gas transport. So one of the more interesting one that we recently transported was actually the 2 baby giraffes from to the Singapore Zoo, and eventually we actually start adopting them as well. So yeah, those are the interesting things I can share.
Okay, I think we have a question from Zoom.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Hello, my name is Anton Zakharov. I'm from startup iGauge, based in Paris, France. I'm just curious, all this data that you receive from sensors, how are you going to use it? Do you analyze it? Do you have a team dedicated to that, or platform? Can you tell us about that, please?
Would it be possible to repeat your question? We can't hear you really clearly.
Sorry. Is it better?
Yeah, I think it's better. Thanks.
I'm just curious how you're going to use the data that is being extracted from sensors on board. Do you have a platform to do some analytics on it, or do you have a team at PCL?
Right, so depending on the sensor data, right? So again, if it's predictive maintenance or if it's engine performance, for example, this will usually involve another service provider that helps to analyze the data within the platform, whether it's AI, whatever the background is. So what we are really looking for is the middleman to help us package the thing and send it out to them.
Understood, thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions from Zoom at the moment? Okay, any questions from the floor? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Ada here. So Ron, you were saying that you got data from different IoT devices, sensors, etc. So they are probably using different protocols and different file types, and sending it out in their own, so-called languages, and somebody has to, go and open up one by one to so-called review before the third party can do preventive maintenance. Is that what you're saying?
No, actually the review part is not necessary. So again, all these data will then be sent to their respective cloud hosting, if you want to put it. So in today, there's no human interventions. The portal will pick it up, they will analyze and gives you a certain result. Taking for predictive maintenance, for example, the vibrations of the engine or the sound of the engine, for example, picks up by the sensor. It then gets sent out to the service provider. The service provider will then put it into their system, churn out a result and says whether it's operating normally, or is it going to need some more, TLCs, right?
Right.
So in this case, what we struggle, like we mentioned before, is each vendor will have their own sensor types. Right? How do I have a middle layer that consolidates all this and sends it out to the respective people that I want?
Okay.
Is this because that when you are when you are somewhere on the international sea, the way you want to send out the data is because it's much easier to cost effective to send out the data sometimes. Then all this data can reach out to, let's say, I mean, like able to detect which data belongs to which one, right?
Actually, the biggest pinpoint is not about sending it out. It's about gathering it together. So imagine today you are going to sell me a solution that I'm going to look at predictive maintenance for my engine, right? First thing you're going to ask me is you need 3 or 4 sensors that needs to be near the engine. And your requirement is to lay by cables, for example. Now I lay your cables and somebody else comes along and says, I'm going to predict how your engine is performing just from performance part, right? My sensors work on Bluetooth. Then can you imagine the amount of cables I need to lay? First, your cables plus the other vendors. Yeah.
Okay. I think we can move on first. Yeah, I can just jump in if any further questions down the line. Yeah, so I heard you mention predictive maintenance a couple of times. Yeah, so just wanted to understand a bit more about it. Is it highly practiced in the maritime industry, or what kind of maintenance methods are currently being used?
Well, it is the buzzword nowadays, right? Predictive maintenance, AI, all this comes hand in hand. So there are few companies or few technologies we have tested before, whether it's from sound, whether it's from vibration, even just looking at prehistorical plant maintenance records. You will be able to predict, a certain make and model is this make and model going to break down in a certain month, or should you have certain spare parts to be changed in that particular month? So all these are common in the industry now.
Okay. Because you did mention, just wanted to jump back to the point of sensors, right? So I believe there are a lot of machinery on board, all the vessels, the containers. So just wondering, are all these kind of equipped with either the relevant sensors and the relevant cables for, startups to provide solutions for? Because you did mention that you wanted to get a holistic view of the entire thing. So just wondering if there are like sensors of all these equipments already. Yeah.
I think this is a good question, right? So maybe just to share with the group, there are 2 types generally. I would like to categorize them into 2 types. One we call vessels that are already on the water, means they are old. And in our world, we call it more of a retrofitting, right? To make all these vessels, old vessels, advanced.
Yeah.
There are also the other group of vessels, which is what we call the new building vessels. New building vessels then comes with more advanced technology, sensors already in place, a whole bunch of stuff. Now, taking these 2 scenarios as a use case, if we are talking about old vessels and trying to retrofit, means I need to have a fast way to test out different initiatives, right? Cable laying is something that we try to avoid altogether if possible. With minimal laying, then we will be able to really test out different initiatives. That's one thing that we wanted to do for retrofitting. Now, for new vessels, if you try to look ahead a few years from now, right? If I buy a new vessels and it was retrofitted with, or rather fitted already with an advanced technology, does it mean that this vessel will be stuck with that technology forever? Right? Without a middle layer, chances are yes, unless you decide to yank out every single sensor and put new ones, right? If not, you'll probably be stuck with that. So these are the things that we try to consider.
Okay. Because you did mention there are those slightly older vessels that kind of require retrofitting. So maybe I just wanted to ask, are they still fitted with cables currently? So by retrofitting, you mean the cables have to be removed and sensors to be put on, or in? Yeah, I just wanted to clarify what.
Chances are there's no cables at all.
Okay.
Right, so we end up having to penetrate the entire decks and start laying new cables. So again, you see, that's the reason why for older vessels, whenever we, whether it's Pier 71 or any other organization tries to make it more advanced, right? Why doesn't we just throw in all the sensors? But the amount of work put into cable laying, and if you try with one particular vendor and we didn't like the solution, chances of switching to another vendor is going to take a lot of time, right? That was at least for me, I think it would be a big pinpoint.
Okay. So because you did mention that cabling is really time consuming to definitely to fit in, definitely to remove. Maybe how much time can fitting in sensors save for you?
No, if we are talking about this middle layer of solutions,
Yeah.
if it is available, right, then
Okay.
it also means that I could trial any vendor as and when I want.
Okay. So you were saying that the older vessels currently have cables, right? So if like there's a startup who's able to provide the solution, does it mean that you'll be willing to remove the cables to try to retrofit the solution, or how will it kind of be tested on maybe older vessels or newer ones?
It really depends on the solution, right? If there is really a way to have a vanilla,
Mm.
method to
Yeah.
integrate everything together, chances are once we do it once, then the chances of us having to redo the entire thing again in future is lessened. Then
Yeah.
it's definitely something a win-win for everyone.
Okay. Just wondering, because you did mention that there are sensors and all this. So just want to check if the crew on board these vessels, are they trained to, manage the sensors or manage the cables, or yeah, is there anything on a daily basis that startups might need to know of, or anything you want to share with the startups that might be useful in helping them to craft your solution? Yeah, maybe anything industry specific, because they might not be from the maritime industry.
Yeah, first thing first, seafarers are not data analysts, right? They are not trained to read data. If you go on board a vessel and you try to ask them to lay cables,
Yeah.
they usually stare at you for a
Okay.
while, because that's the last thing they wanted to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because the amount of work is really a lot, right? It's easy for us on shore to actually tell them we need it, but yeah, it's just a hassle. Yeah.
Okay. Maybe I just wanted to check if any questions on Zoom. Okay, so just wondering, maybe we could wrap up soon, if that's okay. If there's anything else you would like to share with them regarding okay. So thank you so much, Ron, for coming here today and sharing some of your insights or questions. Yeah, so maybe we could go to the next slide, please. Yeah, okay, so Smartboard Challenge applications are already open, and they're open until the 8th of July 2359. So to submit submit applications beforehand. And also, if you want to find out more about innovation opportunities, you can scan the QR code on the screen. Yeah. Next slide, please. Yeah, so we also have other roadshows, and our upcoming one will be Ask Me Anything with Equatorial, which will be happening tomorrow. And we will have more roadshows coming up next week with ABS and as well as PSA. Yeah, so you can scan the QR code if you would like to join and learn more about these innovation opportunities. Yeah, lastly, you can always follow us on LinkedIn to get, the latest news, or watch any of our videos that similar to the ones that you have seen just now, and you can join our newsletter as well. Yeah, so thank you, Ron, for joining us today. Yeah, and see y'all in the next innovation roadshow. Thank you.